WFAU time, 9:30.
This morning's Talkback asks Senator Muskie. We are told on a telephone call we've just received that Senator Muskie should be at our studios momentarily. The Easter vacation has brought about a recess in the National Congress wherein senators and congressmen are back in their home states in a variety of appearances relating to the affairs of Washington, the nation, and the world. Senator Edmund S. Muskie, senior senator from Maine, has managed to include a talkback appearance on his schedule and an opportunity for the Maine constituency of our area to ask questions. At least if all works well and he's able to get here in the interim period, we've been advised that he was on a telephone call to Washington, an important call, and he would be here at any moment. We are still awaiting for his arrival. Those of you who would like to join us on the telephone, our telephone will be available to you at 623-3878, and we'll be able to ask some questions of the senator. We understand he has a very pressing schedule today. We may be able to hold him over about 10 minutes after the 10 o'clock period. As such, we are planning right now to eliminate our usual 10 o'clock news, and we will go right on for as long as we can hold the senator in our studios. Senator Muskie has just arrived. Senator, welcome to our studios. We finally make it, huh?
Sorry, and I apologize. I've been listening to you for the last 2 or 3 minutes, so I know you've been explaining to your listeners.
You made it. You made it. And on a very important call to Washington.
That's right. Huh? Yes. I wanted to talk to the president's chairman of economic advisors, Mr. Schultz, about the president's decision to drop the tax rebate proposal.
I was going to ask you about that.
A decision that I find very disturbing, and we may get into that. But in any case, I got notification of it at midnight last night without any opportunity to get an explanation for it. And I've known Charlie Schultz for a long time, and I decided to get hold of him first thing this morning so that when you asked me that question on this show,
you'd be ready.
I'd be ready.
Okay. Senator, would you like a coffee?
I think I've already put in word.
You put in your order for it, huh?
Right.
Okay, we've got some telephones that are beginning to ring, and I'll remind our listeners that the telephone number here is 623-3878 for any of you who'd like to join us in conversation. But before going to that first telephone call, and I'd like to pose a general question, Senator. With the current administration's relations in regards to the Soviet Union, surface-wise, this seems to be a very sensitive issue. Doesn't the recent fishing boat incidents off the Massachusetts coast and the resulting U.S. Coast Guard actions indicate further difficulties to be reflected in our diplomatic dealings?
I don't think that's inevitable. I talked to the president about that day before yesterday. I was at the White House to talk about Clean Air Act and the president's upcoming energy proposal. And in the course of it, asked him about the 200-mile limit and the Soviet violations. And he said that the Soviets were responding very positively about it. He saw no indication that it was going to lead to a confrontation, that there was need for something of an educational program on the Soviet side. The Soviet fishermen, of course, are under the direct control of the government. It isn't private enterprise. And so it's necessary to get in tune with this new American law, the new American enforcement policy. And I gather that that's the direction in which the Soviets will move. It's conceivable that they might make it another difficult incident in the relationship between the Soviet Union and the United States. But at the present, I think they understand that we mean business, that the president means business, and that they've got to conform. So I'm hoping, on the basis of what the president said, that what we will see is an accommodation on the part of the Soviets to the realities of our present law and our present political situation in that respect.
Very good. Senator, we've got lines that are buzzing away, as you can see, so we've had one person that's been on one line here, I don't know how long. So let's jump to a telephone, reminding you that the number is 623-3878. Senator Edmund Muskie, our guest of the morning. Good morning.
Morning, Senator Muskie.
Yes, sir.
I'm glad you could make it this morning.
Well, I am too.
I was kind of in sympathy with you on that whitewash job they did in Congress on how much you can earn outside your congressional salary. They admitted a few things that it didn't seem right. It looked more like a whitewash, throw a bone, and people won't say too much.
Well, that's the way I felt about it, and I guess maybe I said it a little bit too strongly at the time.
There's one thing that I've thought about quite a while. Congress works for the citizens. We elect them. And I'll hang up in just a minute. But to me, it seems like it's a conflict of interest that Congress can raise its own salaries. And I've been reading a lot about that lately, too, now, where I guess it's just a voice vote and nobody has to stand up and be counted anymore. But I think to raise a congressman's salary should be up to citizens that elect him.
Well, I don't know exactly how you'd arrange that. We don't have a national referendum on questions of this kind, and I suspect it would be very difficult to do.
Yeah.
The Constitution imposes the responsibility on the legislative body, which is Congress, to set compensation. I myself think that it always ought to be as the result of a direct up and down vote. I don't like these indirect methods. I didn't like it when it was established a few years ago. And so I'm willing to vote. I voted against the last 3 pay raises because I thought with the way that people were struggling to get by, that it was not right for the Congress to use its power to improve its own financial situation. That's been my feeling for the last 7 or 8 years. Since I don't think I voted for a pay raise since 1964, which is quite a while ago. But nevertheless, I think that so long as the Congress does it out in the open, so that the people can judge the case on the merits, I think the citizens will have sufficient control at the next election.
Well, thank you, Senator. I'll go so somebody else can talk.
All right, thank you very
for
much.
calling. Senator, this broadcast is originating in a location next door to a chicken processing plant. I know you're interested in the whole matter of air pollution. Is anything ever going to be done wherein pollution of an odorous contamination, whereby human beings are actually being physically attacked, will have some form of recourse, either in a cease and desist manner, or are we to continue pollution evaluations merely in terms of soot, smoke, or visible evidence as such? You should be very aware of this, having come from the very same community of Rumford, where the odor was always a very great problem.
That's right. Well, so far as the national law is concerned, what we do is protect against those air pollutants that have an effect on health. Now, an odor can have an effect on health, and if that connection can be established, it can be controlled under present federal law. Now, with respect to other aspects of air pollutants, the appearance, the cosmetics, or the smells, those are things that states have the authority to add to the control of federal law. It's what's called the secondary effects of air pollution, and that can be done. And the states find it in the interests of their people and particular communities to protect them against particularly noxious odors. States can do that. But the federal government at the moment limits itself to protecting the health and enforcing whatever other standards states want to include in their programs. And we're having a tough enough time doing that much at the present time.
So what you're saying, in a sense, is that while this might be desirable to go beyond that, the problem here is so great that you'll stick to what you got as a challenge to begin with before proceeding.
But I think the day will come.
You think so?
I think the day will come. Oh, yes. I think that there's one thing that I notice in the polls on pollution, and particularly air pollution, that the people want air pollution controlled, even though it costs them something more. In terms of increased prices for products, what have you. They really are very gung-ho about air pollution, and it's the one thing we have going for us as we fight to protect these laws.
Yeah, this must be the one realistic thing that people believe there's going to be a price to anything that you do nowadays. I think it comes right along with think about the energy crisis, and that's one in itself.
Well, it's such a direct effect, because people can see it. When it takes the form of smog, or they can smell it, or if they're sick or young or old, they can feel it. And it's like a fish in water. A fish probably is more bothered by water pollution than human beings are, because a fish is stuck.
Yeah, he can't get away from it, huh?
Well, the human being is stuck in the air in his community. He can't get away from it, and he's helpless.
I'll let you take a gulp of that coffee there while we jump to a line here and say good morning to you.
Good morning.
You have a question for the senator?
Yes, I do, please.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Senator.
I like the way you folks say senator.
Well, we like to feel that you are our senator. What bothers me is I heard on the radio this morning that our new president is going to give the Social Security people a rub-off on their rebate for $50. Do you think that this is right, rubbing these people out and Congress taking such a damn big increase?
I agree with you. It isn't right. And this is why you may have missed the first few minutes when I finally arrived here at the studio. But I talked to Mr. Schultz this morning, the president's economic advisor, to indicate my great unhappiness with the president's apparent decision to drop the $50 tax rebate. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I told him that up here in Maine, people have already spent that rebate.
Well, gee, these people, they don't get a very big pension, a lot of them, and that $50 would have meant a hell of a lot to them.
Well, I'll just tell you that this morning I gave the president's closest economic advisor what for doing this.
Well,
I told him that he should have consulted with some of us before he did it. That we could, we've been back here now this week with our constituents, and we could give them a better reading on how the people feel about it than could anybody in the White House in Washington.
Well, $50 may not seem much to him or to members of the Congress after the great increase that they received, but to a lot of these poor devils, $50 would mean a heck of a lot.
Well, it's about half of the minimum Social Security monthly payment.
That's right.
So that's a lot of money, and I can tell you I appreciate it.
Okay, sir, thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Right. Senator Muskie, 623-3878. Let's go to the line. Good morning.
Good morning, Norm. Good morning, Senator Muskie.
Good morning, ma'am.
May I ask your position on a very important issue now, and that is on the Panama Canal?
Well, we haven't yet, of course, gotten anything but rumors about what the negotiators are discussing. My own position is that we need to maintain control of the canal for our own purposes and our own defense and our own interests, other than military, for the foreseeable future.
Well,
what we may be able to work out to recognize or in response to legitimate interests of the people of Panama. In the meantime, I think is a question that's very much up in the air at the moment, and it's hard for me to comment on hypothetical possibilities that may be coming down the line.
There are no hypothetical possibilities here. We bought and paid for that canal with American ingenuity and American money. That land is ours. It's ours in total because of the 1903 treaty.
Oh, I understand that point of view.
And I feel that for us to give it away to a Marxist-orientated dictator like Torrijos is foolhardy.
Well, I don't think really that the options are that black and white, ma'am. That's what I'm trying to say.
What I'm afraid of is it's going to be that black and white, and we're going to end up giving it away.
Well, if you have those fears, you're certainly entitled to them. I would hope that there is a way of resolving the problems down there without precipitating armed conflict for the purpose of imposing, a hard and fast position on our part, and without giving away, as you put it, the canal.
We have paid them, about $2 million a year since 1903. We have never reneged on that. We have given them far more than we've gotten in return.
Well, apparently what we've got in return is regarded as very valuable by you yourself.
Granted. But
so apparently we've gotten what we paid for to our satisfaction because you want to continue it.
By all means, we must continue it for our own defense purposes.
Then the question is whether a treaty that was negotiated over a half-century ago is, in all respects, adequate to meet today's problems, given the problems of the people of the country as well as our own. And to say that, after half a century we're not interested in talking to them about a new treaty, I think would be unreasonable indeed.
I think it's like talking to France with the Louisiana Purchase over again. There's no need of it. It's ours. We bought and paid for it.
Well, I don't think the situations are quite the same, ma'am.
It's very similar. And if we are so foolhardy and callous as to give it up and give up our sovereignty, then I suggest we fill it in first and give it back to the Panamanians.
Well, nobody has proposed giving it up, ma'am.
The danger is there. I know it exists.
Well, ma'am, if you've satisfied yourself on that point, I guess there isn't anything I can say to you to reassure you.
All I know
I can only assure you, ma'am, that we will try, at least I will try, to be sure that our legitimate interests are protected, at the same time that we try to be at least willing to talk to the people of Panama about their interests. It is their country. We have this canal right down the middle of their country, which divides it in half, and so they have legitimate interests too. And what we're in the process of trying to do is to accommodate the two. And I just don't think that it serves our interest to just say we're not even going to talk to you.
No, I think they have always been very happy with the situation. Their lifestyle and their economic situation has been greatly raised because of the Panama Canal and because of the money we poured into it. and it wasn't until Torrijos come in that they became unhappy. Now, the only assurance I want from you, Senator Muskie, is that when it comes up into the Senate for a vote, I hope you will vote for our sovereignty over the Panama Canal.
I will certainly consider what you've said, ma'am.
Okay, one more question. I was very unhappy over your voting for Warnke. I was extremely unhappy with that situation, and I still think it's a bad mistake.
Well, I don't think so. Paul Warnke is a man I happen to know very well for a long time, and I have complete confidence in him.
He is also a registered agent of Communist Algeria.
Well,
what countries he may be representing as an attorney, I really don't know. But Paul Warnke is an old friend. I know him as well as I do my own brother, and I have enormous confidence in his ability, his integrity, his commitment to our country's interests. He was a foreign policy advisor to me during the years when I was running for president, and never once was there ever an occasion in which he didn't bend over backwards to recommend policies which protected our interests in this country. Now, I can't throw away that kind of personal confidence that I developed over years because of the fact that he may or may not be registered to represent a foreign country in some limited way that
a foreign country, but a communist country, so it's vowed to destroy us.
Well, we could get into
I
a whole
don't
lot.
think Algeria is quite in a position to destroy us, ma'am.
No, the communism is.
Well, we could go into a whole argument on this. We got some other calls here. I want to thank you for calling.
Okay, thank you very much.
Let's go to another line here. Good morning.
Good morning. It's a question I'd like to ask Senator Muskie. Diplomacy with, especially with Russia right now, and some of these communist nations that we're dealing with. Don't you think that we are appeasing, we're using the same appeasement we used and Chamberlain used before World War II? Chamberlain appeased the Germans, Hitler, and his clique.
Well, I think it is important, to try to stabilize and hopefully to roll back the arms race. There's no element of our own budget that is growing more rapidly and consuming more tax dollars than the costs of defense and the fueling of the arms race. And I'm sure that's true with the Soviet Union as well. So I think it serves each of our interests, maybe for different reasons, to try to hold those costs down and reduce the burden of arms on our people. Now, I don't consider that appeasement. I mean, at the moment, we're spending, in the 1970 budget, we are proposing to spend $120 billion. That's more than, that's 50% higher than the entire federal budget 20 years ago when I was governor of Maine. Now, I think our people deserve some relief, if we can provide it without letting our defenses down, some relief from that burden. And I don't propose, and nobody else proposes, that in the SALT talks that we just, let our defenses down and let the Soviets get ahead of us. And our defense budget's going up every year as evidence of that. But nevertheless, I think we can serve both objectives, a strong defense and at the same time a leveling off of defense expenditures if we can reach an agreement with the Soviet Union to do the same. Now, that's what the SALT agreement's all about. At the present time, there are, well, I guess if you counted them all up, maybe 4 proposals that the two countries have on the table for consideration, and we are so far apart at the moment that the possibility of an agreement seems pretty remote. But I suspect that we'll begin talking again and begin to try to close the gap once more in the interests of reaching an agreement that will stabilize the arms race. Now, I think that's a legitimate objective, and I don't consider it appeasement. Now, in Chamberlain's day, what cost the British at that time was that they had not kept their defense up. If you will remember, and I suspect your memory goes back to that time as well as mine, Churchill for years had been prodding the British to build up their defense, to build up their navy, to build up their air force. And the British Parliament and the British government had turned deaf ears to him. And it was because the British defense was not adequate that Chamberlain was forced to deal with Hitler in appeasement terms, with what, and history, of course, tells us what happened. Well, now, this isn't the same situation now. Our defense is more than adequate at the present time, and it will be maintained in that state. So we will not be in a position of weakness that could result in appeasement. And so there's quite a difference. And the mood in Washington is to maintain a strong posture, defense posture, and a strong negotiating position. And I really want to assure you on that, sir.
We thank you, sir, for calling. A program this morning with Senator Muskie. Let's go to the line. Good morning.
Good morning. May I speak with Senator Muskie?
Yes, sir.
Why, when Mr. Nixon wrote through whatever it is to Manchester, New Hampshire newspaper, letter about Uruguay and so forth, you don't sue Mr. Nixon paper and you campaign, because I like you and I didn't campaign for you, and you lost the body on that thing, on that letter. Why you didn't sue Mr. Nixon? Why you didn't do anything about that thing? It's very personal question.
Well, that's ancient history now. I don't worry about things that happened that far back. I appreciate your support at the time. It was an unfortunate incident. It hurt politically.
Why you did not?
Why I did not what?
Why you did not sue?
Sue him?
Why didn't I sue him?
No, him, the committee. Whoever wrote the letter about Uruguay and so forth.
Well, it's never been established who did write the letter, sir. We've never been able to identify. I always suspected Mr. Loeb of writing the letter. Others suspected the committee to re-elect President Nixon, but nobody has ever yet, to this day, identified the writer of the letter.
There was no proof, in other
There's
words.
no proof.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very
sir.
much.
Thank you for calling, sir. Let's get our final call. This is going to be the final call. Good morning.
Good morning, Senator Muskie.
Good morning, sir.
Make it quick, huh?
In our government, we have three branches, executive, legislative, and judicial. By way of setting the stage, which of the, between the legislative and the executive has the responsibility for doing something, having done something about this energy problem? Should that have initiated with Congress or with the executive branch?
Well, both. The president, of course, has the responsibility for developing national policy, as does the Congress, but the president is in a better position, really, to develop policy ideas than the Congress, and it works out best when the executive and the legislature work together. Now, occasionally, when you have the White House and the Congress controlled by different parties, each undertakes to take the leadership independently of the other. That doesn't always work out well. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. For the last 3 years, with a Republican president and Democratic Congress, we had some difficulties in putting together a comprehensive energy policy. I am hoping that we'll do better with both the White House and the Congress in one party. The president will submit his energy message next week, and I'm just hoping, because we need it, that it is the basis for a comprehensive energy policy. And we'll certainly try to help work with the president to do that.
All indications are it's going to be a tough one, though.
It will be a tough one, no question.
The problem is, this thing has been going on now about 4, 5, 6 years. I mean, when this energy problem, the boycott, and all this sort of thing originally started. And for the life of me, I can't see why, if it's in the area of the legislature, the legislative branch, why something hasn't been done long before this. This is a terrible situation.
Well, some things have been done, and it's a little difficult with 60 seconds left to really do justice to your question, which is a very important and relevant one. But some things have been done. There's a lot more yet to be done. The great difficulty, the single greatest difficulty that's involved in all of this, is that even though energy prices are high by all of our historical standards, in order to develop some of the newer sources of energy, prices are probably going to have to go up, and that's a very difficult thing to do when people are struggling with prices as they are.
I said I would get Senator Muskie out of here by 5 minutes past 10 o'clock, and I've got to do it. We thank you for calling.
Back again soon so we can discuss some more of these things, please.
I sure will, and I'll try to come back so that maybe we can have an hour.
This was he said he promised it to me.
This was an appetizer.
We're sorry for those other people who are on lines that are holding right now. We can't make it. Incidentally, Senator, as you leave, there are a couple of young ladies out there, Debbie Fair and Brenda Gover from the Halldale High School. They're here part of a Careers Day program out of Halldale, and they want their photograph taken with you. Will you stop for just a moment?
If you've got a camera that'll take it, I'll be happy to do it.
Senator, thank you very much for being our guest this morning.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Come back again, huh?
I will.
WFAU